Well, Patty, it is that time of year when severe weather can rear its ugly head.
Absolutely.
And for RVers, that can be quite scary.
It can.
So I thought what we would do today is we would talk about how we deal with the threat of severe weather when we're RVing in this episode of Travels with Delaney,
the podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Patrick.
I'm Patty.
And we've got Truman and Bess once again sitting here with us.
Cavalier King Charles Spaniels.
Yep, joining us on the podcast couch.
Truman
Is that what we call it? The podcast couch?
Or Truman thinks it's a Zoom couch.
The Zoom couch, yeah. I do a lot of Zoom meetings for work back here, and he loves
to sit
Zoom
in this
meetings.
couch, yeah.
He'll just sit and listen, and
all the people on the
he
other
might
side,
enjoy the meetings more than I do.
I think he listens. Yeah, he's learning a lot.
He is learning a lot.
He's very knowledgeable.
All right, Patty, well, let's get started. But before we get into the topic, we need to do another edition of This or That.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, Patty, we are stopped for a quick break.
Uh-huh.
And you have to make a decision.
Okay.
Are you going to grab yourself a bag of M&M peanuts?
Ooh.
Or are you going to grab those little chocolate-covered donuts?
Oh, my.
Snacky time.
Snacky time. I think. I'm going to go with those M&M peanuts.
The M&M peanuts.
Or the peanut M&Ms, however you say it.
Yeah, whatever. M&Ms with peanuts.
Yeah, I do. I like them both. But, those
Yeah.
little donies are good if you put them in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And you harden up the chocolate, but I would go with the peanut
I knew
M&Ms.
not to offer you the powdered sugar ones because you would say, well, they'll make too much of a mess in the
Yeah, I
truck.
usually don't choose those.
No. I know, I mean, for anyone who watched our YouTube channel since the beginning,
M&M peanuts.
M&M peanuts are
Or
one of
peanut
Patty's
M&Ms, whatever.
go-to snacks when we're traveling.
I've had to lay off of them some.
Yeah, we don't eat. Well,
Not
it
as
used to be. It was always me eating Albany's gummy bears and you eating the M&Ms with peanuts.
Mama was blowing up like a balloon.
I still blew up even without eating the Albany's. I might as well kept eating them. So
yeah, I gotta if I do get them, it's like one of each color, and then roll the bag up and put it off to the side.
Right.
Yeah, and then.
All right.
Then have restraint.
Just curious, make the stop. You grab something.
I would do that. Yeah.
Maybe I should have offered you beaver nuggets.
Oh, that's still easy. That's the peanut M&M.
I know, because you're not a big fan.
Beaver nuggets are so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they stick in your teeth.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into today's topic because I think there's a lot to unpackage in this one.
All right.
And that is, what do you do when you are RVing and there is the threat of severe weather? And
you don't yell 911 and mommy and scream
maybe
your head off.
And over our, I guess, 19
We've
years,
experienced a lot of this.
We have. In fact, I remember the very first time we encountered severe weather. We were pretty, what would it be? Naive. I remember sitting in our very first RV, which was a Tab.
We should have got out of that thing.
And we were at a KOA in Port Huron, Michigan.
Yes, a very nice KOA. Awesome.
There was like a tornado like 5 miles away, and we just sat in the camper oh.
I guess they'll tell us to get out.
Yeah.
They haven't said.
Looking back, I'm like, what were we thinking?
We should have grabbed. I don't know if he had a pup then.
That's a little too. Yeah, we would have had Maddie.
Ran to the restroom or something.
Yeah, we were a little naive.
Dumb.
We have, and some of you have seen, like at least 50 of you, watched the episode in our very first YouTube series.
Yes.
Back in 2017 where
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Where we were traveling.
Traveling through Iowa. And dodging tornadoes for,
it was,
I don't know, for what, 6 hours?
It was a long time. It was crazy. It was like the movie Twister.
It was.
I've never experienced anything like that. I mean, it was.
It started probably at, I don't know, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, and it was continuous.
I think we were in Des Moines, Iowa. We had just made the turn south. We had to get to Kansas City because I had a work meeting the next day. And we had barely started south. Like, we were still on the outskirts of Des Moines and had to pull over because Patty, and we're going to get into how we track this.
Yeah.
But Patty said, there is a tornado coming through right here.
We need to pull off.
And I remember I got off nothing at the exit, had to drive several miles, finally found a convenience store, pulled in, and we ended up going into the convenience store and writing that one out. But and then I remember we actually turned around, went back north,
debated about going over to
Omaha and cutting around.
And we realized that's not going to work.
And we kind of thought, well, we'll just ride it out because the storms were just south of us at that point.
Right.
So we had dinner in a Walmart parking lot and then finally said, we got to get going.
We have to move, yeah.
And for the next several hours, we would enter and exit the highway multiple occasions.
Well, and then darkness came.
Well, it was dark most of the way.
And just the
heavy
flashes
rains
of light, and you can't see the road, and the road is lots of water.
Yeah.
And you're trying not to hydroplane, and it was crazy.
It was a scary moment.
It was.
I won't lie. And if I didn't have to be at a work meeting, we would have just
waited somewhere north of it.
But
Yeah.
all right. So as we get into this discussion, I thought first thing we ought to do before we talk about how we deal with it, let's talk about some of the basic terms everybody should be familiar with.
Yep.
And so a severe thunderstorm watch, a severe thunderstorm warning. So anytime you hear watch, that means that conditions are favorable.
Doesn't mean you're going to get anything.
Exactly. And so a watch just means to be on the watch.
You need to watch. Be alert.
Yeah, be alert. And severe thunderstorm means there is a potential for lots of rain.
Maybe some hail.
Lightning, high winds, and lightning. And by the way, a severe thunderstorm can do a lot of damage, especially if it ends up having those, do they call them derecho winds?
Derecho winds. That's what affected the woods here one summer. Yeah, the straight line derecho.
Straight line winds. So you shouldn't necessarily go, oh, well, it's not a tornado, so we're okay. We've been through some pretty nasty, severe storms that were not tornadic.
Right.
And we can talk about what makes it a tornado here in a second. A warning means that there is an actual severe thunderstorm.
You need to take shelter.
And you need to take shelter or precautions.
Don't hide out in your camper.
Yeah.
Get out.
It's not worth it, in my opinion. And if you're in a tent, also get out.
Get out.
We have been in a severe thunderstorm in a tent before.
That was freaky.
Yes. So a warning, and so you're going to need to know, like, am I in that warning area?
You need to know what to look for.
And we're going to get to that in a second, how we find out if we're in a warning area. So severe thunderstorm, watch versus warning. Tornado watch versus warning. Same thing. A watch means conditions are favorable, but doesn't mean there is a tornado. A tornado warning means that someone has spotted a rotation or a funnel cloud. And the difference between a severe thunderstorm and a tornado, from a non-meteorologist standpoint, because I'm not a meteorologist, but there is a rotation. And then it can drop, a funnel cloud can drop to the ground. And then depending on where that is on the rating scale, because they do rate tornadoes from like an F0 to I think an F5.
Right. And just recently in Indiana, there was some F2s and F3s south of us. So.
And they can, I mean, first of all, your RV is going to be no match.
No.
When houses are no match for some tornadoes, trust me, an RV
when you think of how these are made and what they are, save yourself.
Right. And you're not going to outrun a tornado.
No. This isn't Twister.
No.
The movie.
So, but I always like to point out when we have these discussions the difference between watches and warnings and the difference between severe thunderstorms, because I think a lot of people underestimate a severe thunderstorm warning. Because they're like, well, it's not a tornado warning.
But still, it can be just as bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then a few other things you should be aware of when you're traveling that you might encounter is flooding. We know for a fact last summer they had massive flooding right after we left the state of Vermont.
Yes.
In fact, our friend Jonathan and Beckett from Tree Talker the Traveler YouTube, they were up there during the flooding to the point that they thought they might have to evacuate.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, they had to stay in the campground.
But then they thought, oh,
because they couldn't get their trailer out until the waters rescinded.
They had to wait.
Yeah. They had to wait it out. So flooding is something to be aware of. Also, John and Carolyn O'Boyle from the Graham Shanrock tour, they were trying to get over to somewhere from Maine.
Yep.
And I know John had some amazing footage of
trying to get the roads.
The roads were washing out.
Or they were blocked, or you had to go this way and change your route. And, it was crazy.
Yep. High wind warnings. So
those freak me out.
You can have no severe thunderstorm, but have just high winds, especially this time of year, like the winter months here in the Midwest, as we're transitioning from winter to spring. Yeah, and so if you're hauling, those high winds can really beat you around.
Yeah, like last week it was up to 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts.
Yeah, I would not have wanted to been hauling.
And it was pushing our little Subaru, but I wouldn't want to have a rig or a I always think those tractor trailer guys, they're brave.
Right.
So.
And then ice.
Ice is bad.
Again, if you get into the northern states and even the southern states at times
They'll
during
get
the winter
hit.
can get hit with ice storms. And ice is the one thing I do not mess around with.
Doesn't matter if you have four-wheel drive. Ice is not your friend.
No.
Nope.
Especially pulling an RV. It's
Oh,
not a
no.
friend with just a car,
Anything.
but let alone an
Me
RV.
on my feet.
So those are all weather situations
Yep.
you need to be aware of. I always feel like when we're RVing, you have to make a conscious effort of being aware
of what's going on,
of what's currently going on and what's expected. So, and that doesn't mean to freak out and cancel your trip, but it just means, a good example was 2 Christmases ago, we had a blizzard hit here in Indiana right before we were to leave for Florida.
Yeah.
And so we literally adjusted our travel plans because we were supposed to leave on Christmas morning.
We had to wait.
And we were going to leave at like 6 in the morning, but we didn't know what condition the roads were in because the blizzard had hit 2 days prior. And so we made the decision to wait till daylight. And even then it took us
a long time to get from our house to the main highway.
Yeah, and what that normally is like a 15-minute drive. I think it took us about 30 minutes.
30 minutes, yeah.
Because the back roads were still in bad shape. Once we got to the highway,
we were okay.
Yeah.
And then it got better and better as we went south.
So, I mean, it's just using common sense. Like, hey, you know what? It's hard to see in the dark.
Let's wait.
Wait till daylight, and then we'll assess the situation and things like that.
Right.
So,
yep.
All right. So how do we try to stay alert, prepared, and avoid disaster? Well, that sounds so... Avoid disaster. It's like a thematic movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I'm Jim Cantori.
All right. We use our smartphones. Yeah, Jim Cantori. Yeah, that's rule number 1.
If Jim Cantori's in your area,
if he's in your RV
doomed.
park, you're doomed. Yeah. And for those who are like, who's Jim Cantori?
Watch the Weather Channel.
Watch the Weather Channel. So I think most people know who Jim Cantori is.
Yeah, he's been on there forever.
I think one of the funniest things I saw was last fall when the hurricane was heading towards Maine.
He was at a safe spot.
It was headed right for our friends Jeff and Lynn's campground.
Yeah.
And their son Nate.
Yeah.
So like Maine was going, like they were in high preparations.
Get in your safe zone.
And Nate went out and put on they have like one of those reader board signs out by the road. And he put, "It's not a hurricane till Jim Cantori shows up." They ended up getting some good media coverage.
Yes, they did.
And I believe possibly, I don't know if it was ever on the national news, but I know throughout Maine and on social media, which Nate, very good marketing on your point. So, and luckily their campground was spared. They actually had multiple storms go through in Maine.
They did.
And Jeff and Lynn were very lucky.
Fortunate.
Yeah,
lucky.
Thank goodness. So, all right, let's start with, because again, smartphones. That's what I was talking about. Your smartphone is going to be your friend when it comes to weather. Now, one of the things you could do before we get into the smartphone is you could buy a NOAA weather radio to keep in your RV. And we're not saying you shouldn't. We currently don't use one, and maybe we still should. I don't know.
We have one in the house.
But we do have one in the house. No weather radio will pick up the local NOAA signal, and then it will go off if there are watches and warnings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it will jolt you out of bed in the middle of the night.
It does. It's like, get up.
Yeah.
There's no sleeping when that thing goes
And you
off.
might say, well, why aren't you carrying one? Well, we're going to get to that.
We'll get to
settle
that.
down now. Okay? Those of you in your car, don't have a wreck because we don't have one.
Well, let's start with the easy, the Weather Channel app.
Weather Channel app.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you don't want to use the Weather Channel app, you might use AccuWeather.
Well, and I have multiples on my phone.
You actually have multiples that you like to...
I got Weather Channel, AccuWeather, and then a fun one is just Weather Pup.
Weather Pup.
Yeah, because it gives you a cute puppy for your different locations. And but anyway, I have different ones that I kind of look at because sometimes... it just depends on because sometimes, I think like the Weather Channel is all computer based and it's different than one other.
Right.
Anyway.
Models can vary.
Yeah. So I just try to get all my ideas.
So
I'm a
Patty,
weather guru.
you're kind of I don't look at forecasts very often.
I do.
And Patty's the one, that's kind of her thing. And she'll say like, hey, just so you know.
We're going to have some rain coming up.
Or severe weather
when
the day we're traveling. And this is something we need to keep an eye on. And I'm glad she does because a lot of times I would not know that we might have to haul through severe weather if Patty hadn't been looking at the forecast. Now, doesn't mean we change our travel plans necessarily or anything like that.
I just keep my eyes on the sky.
Yep. And so those are just good apps for knowing what you might encounter.
Sure.
And sometimes it's positive. It's like, hey, guess what? It's going to be mid-80s the whole week on vacation,
yes!
and sunshine.
And yeah,
so
nice.
Although then I suppose you're going to break out the UV and tell me I got
I need to probably do that because we're from Indiana.
Up.
Yeah, we need to make sure we have our sunscreen.
Right. All right. So in terms of why do we not use a NOAA weather radio anymore, you found an app a few years ago.
A friend of mine gave me the idea. She's like, why don't you guys, she found it. It's called Storm Shield.
And it's a free app, I believe.
It's free.
Yep.
And what it does is it's kind of like NOAA radio. It, as you're traveling, and we're moving down the road, and let's say we stop at a rest area for a little bit, I change the settings, because you go in the settings and change your location, and it updates your location. You have to. That's the only thing I wish it did.
I think you can set it to auto,
okay.
But then if it's always searching for location, it drains your battery.
That's true.
So I think we set it to where we manually will.
I go in and do it myself.
Right.
And then usually I do it once. If I know there's bad weather coming, then I'll change it as we're driving. But if not, I don't change it until we get to like our campsite or whatever for the evening, so that overnight if something pops up that I'm unaware of, it'll make a sound. It'll do a little siren just like the NOAA weather app to wake you up.
Yep.
And say, hey, get up, something's going on. And then when we're at our place for our long visit, like when we go to Florida here, it'll be set for Lake Buena Vista and the area, and it'll sound off if there's anything going on. It even does like fog, heavy fog.
You can set it to what alert you want, because, and I will warn you, you're probably going to want to clear out some of them, because some of them
it'll go off all the time.
It goes off nonstop, because I don't necessarily need to know when there's a humidity alert.
Yeah, I
or
don't
when
do
there's
those.
Things like that. So you'll
unless,
want to set it for the things that are most important to you.
Yeah, and like another example I didn't think of, like last summer when we had those air quality alerts with the fires from Canada.
Oh my God, it was going off constantly.
So you can set it to not do those kind of things. So, but yeah, so that's kind of like NOAA weather app, and we don't have to carry that, and it goes through digital. It's through your signal. You have it.
I guess the only time is if you did not have a cell signal, then that might be where you'd want to carry a NOAA. The truth is, we actually do have a NOAA weather. I did kind of lie.
We have
if we have to,
we use it.
If we have to use it, like if we don't have a cell signal, we actually have. It's a little
one
from Midland. If I remember, Midland sent to us years ago.
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's a little handheld, battery powered that we keep in the trailer that we could turn on not only to get NOAA weather to just hear the forecast where we're at, but it will also alert you. And so we just normally don't turn it on. It's just tucked away.
I just use the phone because the phone goes with me.
Right.
Just like if we're out and about and all of a sudden there's a severe weather warning or whatever, and the pups are back in the rig, we know to get back. It's just convenience. So yeah.
I'm thinking there's at least 3 people listening to this podcast right now going, you know what? He just lied to us, and I cannot believe a word he says anymore. So,
well, it's called lapse of memory.
Right? Yeah, I forgot that.
And we haven't been in the rig.
Yeah, but when you said that about the cell signal, I remember like, oh yeah, that's why we keep that in there if that were ever to be an issue. So yeah, I like Storm Shield just because sometimes these weather events occur in the middle of the night. We have actually had situations where we went to bed and there was no threat. And
all of a sudden, bam!
Middle of the night, you get this. If you don't wake up from the lightning and the thunder
and the wind and whatever,
the radio or the cell phones will wake you up saying there's a severe thunderstorm warning for wherever you're at.
So I got to thank my friend Celia. She's the one that got me onto Storm Shield because she's also a camper friend, and she had found it and used it and loves it, and so.
So we like that one. Another one that we have used for a really long time is a dedicated radar app called Radar Scope. Now, this is not a free app.
But I would not go without it.
And I know somebody's probably saying, well, you know what? Weather Channel has a radar. But those radars are delayed.
They are.
By as much as 15 to 20 minutes.
And Radar Scope is
maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And the difference, and you might say, well, who cares about 12-minute difference? 12-minute difference is life or death if there's a tornado.
Absolutely.
And so to be able to get a 2 to 3 minute update, and if you understand the app, which I don't.
We've been learning a lot about it.
We've tried to learn. It will show wind speeds. It will show
lightning strikes.
We
even learned what a derecho. No. What's that U? It makes a U when you have a tornado.
Well, the
echo
bow.
Anyway, because we had a storm chaser come to your school, Ivy Tech, They got you under radar scope.
Yeah, so I had asked Reed Timmer, the world famous storm chaser. We had brought him as a guest speaker to campus, and during the afternoon I was like just the
rattling
host.
his brain, talking
I was
to him.
I was the host of him all
the host
day.
of the mostest.
And I said, hey Reed, we RV. What would you recommend? And he says, look, I use radar scope. Well, at least back then he was using radar scope.
Yep.
And for the reasons that I mentioned, and I said, okay, well, what do I need? So I bought it right there on the spot, downloaded it, and I'm looking at it, I said, what do I need to know to keep us safe? And I remember, I'll never forget this. He goes, he went and found where somewhere in the U.S. there was a tornado warning, and it puts like a red box for tornado, and
yellow is for flooding.
I
think
so. Maybe green is for. Oh, anyway,
I think green's flood. Yellow is a watch.
But what he said was, he goes, "You see this big box?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Now, if we hit location and your location is in that box," I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Get out." And I said, "Well, but don't I need to be able to?" He goes, "You don't need to know anything else,
just go.
Other than if your location is in a red box." Now, he did explain to me sometimes those watch boxes are wide, which means that tornado may not get to you.
Yep.
But he said tornadoes are unpredictable in their path, and so if you're in that box, you need to seek shelter immediately.
Yes, get out of that.
And that's always been our rule: is if we see that red box for tornado warning, we are, pulling off the highway, finding some place to take shelter, or if we're at a park, we are taking shelter
in someplace safe. Yeah.
Right. And you know what? I can honestly say, over the years, we have had campers make fun of us because
we're the ones going.
We are the first ones to evacuate when there's severe weather, because we were in an RV once where we thought we weren't going to get out in time.
Right.
The RV was literally rocking from side to side.
The shed that was next
to
us
exploded from it ended up not being a tornado. It was those straight line winds.
It just blew it apart.
And it did not end up flipping our trailer, but we thought it was. And
we thought it was going to go.
And I'm not going to wait that long to get out anymore. And so typically, if we're in a area where there is a threat of severe weather, we're checking out when we get there, where is a safe location to go.
Where do we go? Where can we go with the pups? Because we're not leaving them in the trailer.
Right.
Where do we go? How can we get there? What do we do?
And you will have campgrounds say like, well, our bathrooms really aren't a storm shelter. No, but they're better than our RV.
If they're made, the brick.
Yeah.
Brick's going to be better than RV. So.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about running into a porta-john.
No porta-john.
That's not safe either.
That'll end up being like a rocket.
Yeah. But we always, and I'll be honest, we don't really care if it's pet friendly or not.
Nope,
because when it comes to life or death, our pets go with us.
Yep.
And so I remember that in Iowa when we ran into that convenience store, we had Delaney.
And there was some workers at the
door. They
were
standing at the door watching this storm roll through. We run up, we're getting drenched until we got under the awning. And, in fact, we were sitting in the truck, if you remember, and a tree from a limb fell right in front of our truck. A pretty good size one. And I'm like, that's it, we're out. I remember they opened the doors, we ran in, and I said, I know you're not pet friendly, but I don't care. And the worker goes, oh, we don't care as long as she doesn't
make a mess
on the floor.
You go, Patty,
Patty, I said, use the restroom, not. And the two workers started laughing.
Delaney was fine.
She was fine.
Yeah.
So we don't.
I'm like, oh, great.
But I think that's important. If you're in a campground, know where could you go if you needed to take shelter.
Well, and again, on that Iowa trip, we got to the point where it was so much water and it was just so stormy. We saw a hotel on the side of the road.
Yeah.
We got out. The water was above my knees getting through the parking lot.
It was literally coming down that fast, and the parking lot couldn't drain.
And I walk in with Delaney, and I carried her in, and I go to the front desk, and I said, I'm sure this is not good, but is it okay if we sit in your lobby? And I won't put her on the floor.
Well, no, if you remember, I said, I'm done.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, Patty, go in, get us a room.
Yeah. They had no room.
Because I think you had looked up and it said they were pet friendly.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm done. Like my nerves were shot.
It was just bad.
And so I dropped them off as close to the door as possible. I pulled the trailer around park. I run across, and if you remember, you said, do you have a room for the night? And he goes, I don't.
Okay.
They were sold out, but he said, you are welcome to sit in the lobby as long as you want. And so we did. We ended up sitting in the lobby for probably 30 minutes.
We were watching the radars.
Like, it was so severe that night. That's all they had on in the lobby TVs was the Weather Channel.
And everybody, when they saw us come in, and we were talking.
People were so nice.
Yep, and then they were like realizing how bad it was.
Right.
And of course, Delaney's attraction, but yeah.
And he was like, you can stay. I mean, he basically
stay in the lobby as long as you need.
He basically was saying, if you need to sleep in the lobby tonight, you can.
Because we said we have no place.
And so I remember we sat for probably 30 minutes. And
I'm looking at that radar going, we're going to have an opening.
You said there is currently an opening, I think, because we knew if we could get to a certain point, the storms were coming across from west to east.
Yeah.
And we did. We went out. And we drove through a little bit of more heavy stuff. But I remember we finally got to a point where the rain stopped, and I was like, "Are we out?" And you were like, "That's it." And then when we actually got to our campsite that night at like 2:00 in the morning. It was so nice out.
And dry.
Dry, nice.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
It was weird.
So
creepy weird, yeah.
But when we're driving, so if we're at a campsite or campground, we try to find a place that we can take shelter.
Yeah.
If we're driving, Patty tries to I always ask her to tell me ahead of time, because sometimes you're just in between exits and there's no place to pull off.
Right.
And then if she says, like, you know what, because you usually are good about knowing how fast a storm is moving.
I've learned because you showed me what 15 minutes. They have little hash marks on the
and she'll
trajectory.
Say, there is no way you're going to get through the storm. We probably should just pull off and wait it out. And then we'll either find a rest area or an exit where we can
park. We had to do that at Texarkana coming home from Texas one time.
Yep, we waited out a storm
with a bunch of folks. They were just parked, and we just parked with them.
And usually we'll just stay in the truck until, like, all of a sudden, if that red box is over, so then we're out. Then we probably need to go inside.
We need to go somewhere. Yep.
And we'll do that. So if you but here's the thing. Let's say you get caught, because there are some highways in America where you can go a lot of miles without an exit. It used to be people thought, well, pull under a bridge and you'll be safe.
No, don't do that.
And now they're saying, absolutely do
you
not.
You will get sucked out.
Yes. That honestly, they say a worst case scenario is crawl into a ditch. I really don't want to crawl into a ditch.
I don't want to be in a ditch.
But I don't want to die either.
Hold on to the tall grasses or something, I guess.
So luckily we haven't ever been in that situation.
I know.
So the main thing is have your technology.
Be aware of what's going on.
Yep, be aware.
And know where you can go.
And don't try to be a hero.
No.
It's not worth it.
No.
And again, I can't stress this enough for anyone listening who is not accustomed to tornadic activity.
Yeah, I think we're just more sensitive to it.
We understand it. Right. But we have friends
that never had to experience
that don't deal because of where they live. They don't have tornadoes, and then
they had no clue.
Right, and then the comment was, "Well, I would have just hitched up and went someplace."
You don't have time.
You don't have time.
They didn't understand.
Right. I mean, unless you're going to leave hours early.
Right.
But once that tornado once you're in that warning box, you're not going to outrun it. You just need to forget about the RV. That's what insurance is for.
And just
get to safety. Save yourself. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Did we cover everything?
I think so. Now I'm all anxious.
Yeah.
The weather's going to be good today, right?
The weather, it's sunny out, blue skies, and I think we're safe today.
Because I think we're just a little, and just as like a little disclaimer, we're a little hypersensitive to it just because we've dealt with it a lot. And just from being kids and so forth. So
if you want, I think what I'll try to do is remember to link the video. And now understand that video is not good because it was the very first episodes that we actually put up ever on YouTube.
We're very robotic.
So the audio is horrible. But I will link that video for anyone who'd like to go back and see us trying to drive through those tornadoes in Iowa back in 2017. I'll link that in the show notes.
We're like robots.
Yes. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to listen. I know it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but we just want
to be aware.
Yeah, we just want to make you aware, and I'm sure most of you are, and it's just a good reminder as we go into this severe weather season. And Jim Kuzman is our friend, and he is our producer, and we could not do this podcast without him editing these each and every week for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And so, everyone, have fun out there camping, but always remember to stay safe. And until next time, we'll see you.
On down the road.
Bye.
Travels with the lady. We'll see you on down the road.